Welcome back everyone, my name is Davin Reddy and let's learn Scala. Now Scala is one of the most underrated programming language. It's because it's very powerful but not everyone knows about it, right? Now think about this, we have all these languages, right? We have Java, we have Python, C#. Now those languages are powerful. Let's talk about Java here. Java is powerful, it's an awesome language, you can build amazing applications there. Starting from mobile application to web application, we can also build enterprise application. But still we have one issue with Java, which is it's very verbose. It means you have to write a lot of boilerplate code. On the other hand, in Scala we write less code. We don't write boilerplate codes there. So if you want to achieve a task, just code what you need. That's not the case with Java, right? But you might be thinking that's fine, we are happy with Java. It's okay to write some extra lines. That's where the problem starts. The more lines you write, it increases the possibility of having more bugs, right? It also means the bugs are directly proportional to the number of lines. So if you write less lines, you will have less bugs. That's one thing you will get with Scala. Now, one of the amazing features of Scala which I like is it's a JVM language, which means it uses the same concept which Java uses. We have JVM there, all the internal working is same. The language changes. Plus, it gives you a functional styling as well, which means not just object-oriented, you can write your code in functional styling as well. So it's a combination of both, and that's what makes your programming experience better. So while learning Scala, it will change the way you think about programming, about the task. Right? In fact, I have seen this. As we learn new languages, it will change the way you think about language and then the way you implement them. So when I work on Java, I have a different mindset. Same goes for Python, we have a different mindset. And Scala will give you a very different experience. So I hope you will enjoy the entire course. If you're excited, hit that like button and do subscribe because on this channel, we post a lot of programming videos. In this video, we'll see how to set up Scala. Now, once we know what is Scala, once we know why we need to learn it, and the prerequisite to learn Scala is Java, of course. So you should know the basics of Java and you're good to go. So in this video, we'll see how to set up Scala so that we can work on it. And of course, right, when you work with any programming language, let's say C, C++, Java, the first step you have to do is you have to download some software so that we can work on it. So for Scala, what we need. Now, Scala, since as we know that Scala works on JVM, so that means since Scala works on JVM, Eclipse supports the languages which works on JVM, so we can run Scala on Eclipse, right? And that's one of the amazing thing about Scala. So you don't have to learn a different IDE for that. You can simply use Eclipse, which is our old golden Eclipse which we work with Java. Right? So we can work with Scala on Eclipse also. But if you go to the official website of Scala, so you just have to search for Scala and it will take you to the official website which is scalalang.org, right? And if you go here, so see the heading, it is object-oriented meets functional, and that is awesomeness, Scala is both object-oriented and functional, so it has lots of power in it. So if you want to be a powerful programmer, Scala is the way. And the latest version of Scala is 2.11.8. And these are the features of Scala. It says Java interoperability, then type inference, then it provides concurrency and distribution. It supports higher order function. I'm very excited for this part. Then it has pattern matching. It has threads. Now, if you know interfaces in Java, that is threads in Scala. I have to learn the pronunciation of it first. Okay, so we can go to this download tab here, and if you click on this download, you can see you got three options. So you got this option, which is the download, the binary version of it, so that you can, if you want to work on terminal or if you want to work on CMD, this is the best way. You can also use the light bend activator. This is another tool which we can use. So if you use this tool, it is a web-based tool. So that means the software will be installed on your machine. But to access that, we have to use web browser. So if you will be typing your code on web browser, you will running out in your web browser. Okay, this is an amazing tool. In fact, if you download this, it is very heavy file, around 700 MB, if I'm not wrong. And we can also use the Scala on IDE. So you can run Scala on Eclipse, you can run Scala on IntelliJ, or you can run Scala on NetBeans. And this is, so if you work with this, you have to do this step. So if you click on this need help in installation, you have to set all these parts. That's one way. Second way, if you download this one, again, we'll be using Scala IDE Eclipse for our tutorials, but let me show you how this works. So if you download this part, and if you unzip it, this is how it looks. So this is how it will look like. Go to bin, and there's the option of activator dist. Again, you don't have to do this. It is just for, if you are curious about it, then you can do the experiment. Otherwise, leave this. We'll say this once we got some experience on Scala. So it will take some time to open. Don't worry, I've just changed the font of my terminal. That's why just showing you so much big text there. So it will open in this way. Yeah, you can create a new project. So you can click on Scala here. So this is Scala. This is Slick. Slick is for database. I mean, if you want to work with some database framework with Scala, we can use Slick. We can also use Play framework here. Play is amazing framework to work with. So if you click on Scala, it will ask you to create an application. So I have done some experiments, so I already have an application here. The point to remember is this Scala, this Scala is supported by TypeSafe company. And if you click on this project, if you click on the existing app which I have created, so this is how it looks like. I will say run and inspect app object, so that's code. And where is my code? So this is what I was doing on that day. I was doing some experiment. I was printing all those stuff. You can just simply run this code by clicking here, and you can see the output in the run tab, and you can see we got the output. Okay, so we can use this window. Okay, but I'm not a big fan of this window. I don't like web console based things. But if you like it, you can explore this thing. There's no harm in that. But my interest is more on the Scala on Eclipse. Okay, now how to do that? So there are two ways. One, you can download the Scala IDE itself, which will be around 200 to 300 MB. I'm not sure about the size. The another way is, if you already have Eclipse in your machine, see if you can click on this, it will download the whole Eclipse for you, where you'll be having Scala inbuilt. But if you already have Eclipse in your machine, where you used to work with Java, what you can do is, example, I have my Eclipse here. So you can see I have Eclipse here, but in this Eclipse I don't have Scala. You can see if I click on new, there's no Scala project option here. And even if I change the perspective to Scala, there's no option of Scala here. So for that, we have to go to downloads and latest table. You just have to select this URL here, copy it, and go to help, go to install new software in your Eclipse, and paste that URL here. So once you paste it here, it will show you all those options. And which two things you have to install? You have to install the Scala IDE for Eclipse, and you have to install Scala Worksheet. Again, we'll talk about Worksheet a bit later. Select those two, click on next. It will download this stuff for you, and then you have to say next, and your Scala will be installed on your Eclipse. Now, once you install Scala on Eclipse, your Eclipse will look like this. Okay? And if you open the perspective, you can see you will get Scala there. You just have to click on OK, and you will get a Scala perspective here. And now if you right click on your project, we'll say new, and you got the option of Scala project. Now this is possible only when you have downloaded the Scala plugin. So click on Scala project, you can give any name, we'll say first code, and you can see it says runtime environment is Java SE. That's awesome, right? Scala works on JVM, what else we need? Click on next and click on finish, you got your first Scala project. So you can see it has two things. It has certain libraries for Scala, it has certain libraries for Java. That means you can write Scala code inside this. You can also write Java code inside this. So you can write both the codes in one project. And that's why I'm very excited for this. Okay. So let's say if you are a web developer and you're working on Spring Framework, you're working on Hibernate, you can also use Scala in your web application. Okay, so that's something which is awesome about Scala. So that's our first project. In the next video, we'll talk about how to write our first code. So once we have created the project and it is here, now what I need is let's write some code, and we all are excited for the first code in Scala, right? In fact, I'm excited to tell you that. So what we'll do is, now if you are from Java background, you know how to create a new class and how to write hello world, right? And we cannot live without hello world. It doesn't matter which language you learn, maybe C, C++, Java. The first code you write is always hello world. But in Scala, what we'll do is, I mean, we'll write hello world, don't worry, okay, we'll write hello world, but we'll not write, see, if we write hello world in C programming, what we have to do? We have to type, hold on, what we have to type? We have to type hash include, we have to mention, oh, be with me, okay? So when you say in C programming, the way you write your code is you have to write hash include, then you have to say stdio.h, right? And then we have to mention a main function. Then in the main function you can write printf, and in printf you can print hello world. Just imagine how many lines of code we are writing here. Can you see that we are writing hello world? How many lines of code we have there? Now when it comes to Java, what we do? We create a class. Let's name let's say the class name is demo. We write public static void main, right? And then we'll say string a. Then what we do next? We say system. We say system.out.println. We say hello world. See, the only thing, I mean, just to print hello world, we have to write so much of lines of code, right? So when it comes to C programming, we have to write 5 lines of code. When it comes to Java, we have to write again 6 lines of code. Is it 6? Yeah, maybe. So 6 lines of code, right? Now just imagine if you want to do this in Scala, why to write this much of code, right? Because this is a boilerplate code. Now what happens is when somebody says, okay, let's say I'm going to my native place next month, and then let's say in my native place I have my cousins there. Let's say they're from different field, and they say, hey Naveen, what you do? I will say, okay, I'm a trainer. What you teach? I teach Java. So if they ask me, can you explain me one example in Java? I will say, okay, fine. Of course, I will start with hello world, right? So what I will do, I will tell them, okay, first we have to create a class demo. What is class? We'll see later. Then we have to write public static. Hold on, these 2 things we'll see later. Then we write void main, that we'll see later why we have to do that. Then we have to create a string arguments, that we'll see later why we do that. We'll talk about system.out.println, we'll do that later. And that's how you print hello world. I mean, just imagine, just to print hello world, we are skipping all this thing, we are not talking about all this stuff, right? So trust me, as a Java programmer, as a Java trainer especially, I find it very difficult to write the first code. It's very easy, once you know the first code, it is very easy to learn Java. But just imagine that instance of teaching this part to a fresher or to the person who don't know Java. So what Scala says is, why to write all this code when you can do it very easily? So in Scala, Scala provides, if you want to teach someone Scala, don't go for all this stuff. What you can do is you can create a worksheet. Now how to get a worksheet? Right click on your SRC, say new, there's an option of Scala worksheet. Now worksheet, let's name it anything, we'll say this is demo, finish. And your worksheet will have this extension SC at the end. Now this is your worksheet looks like. Again, just ignore this part, we'll not use this. As I mentioned, we'll not talk about anything. Now, your Scala provides you something called as REPL. Okay, again forgot the full form of that. Let me just check it, the full form of REPL. REPL stands for, it is read, eval, yeah, so it is read, eval, print, loop. So it is something where you just have to type the line. So because it is normally used for interactive top level languages. Example, if you type a line, it will give you the output instantly. Okay, so let me just go back to my Eclipse. Now how to achieve that? For that we have to use, again we can do that here. There's no harm in that. What we can do is we can just go to window, show view. We have an option of Scala interpreter. So if I click on Scala interpreter, they can see it is asking you for the project. Okay, I'm working with first project, click on OK. Now this thing here is a Scala interpreter. Okay, I will not use the worksheet which is provided. Let me use the interpreter. Now how do we use it? To use Scala interpreter, you just have to click on this area. So this area is your typing area where you will type your code. I don't know how to increase the font size of this. Let me just increase the font size a bit. That's very, this is the only thing which I hate about Eclipse. We have to edit the font size, you have to do lots of stuff. Okay. Hey, we got the same size. I don't know how to increase the font size of this. That's weird. I just hope you can see this font here. I'm assuming that you can see the font. So what we'll do now is let's print hello world, or let's create a variable which prints hello world. So how do we do that in Scala? We simply say, okay, let me just print hello world. We'll say hello world, and once you have typed it, just say Control Enter. Can you see that? Just write hello world. You got your output here. You just have to type this stuff here and say Control Enter. It will give you the output. We got our first code of hello world. It is that simple in Scala. Just write hello world in double quotes, you will get your thing. If you write the hello world in single quote, will it work? Let's try. Yeah, you can see it is giving you error. So the only way to write hello world is by using double quotes. And as a Java programmer, we all know how to put string, right? That's our first code. Can you believe it? We don't have to write any bullshit code which we write in Java. I mean, all this thing, sorry for those words, but you don't have to write any of this boilerplate code here, right? So that's the awesomeness about Scala here. And how do we create variables in Scala now? So to create a variable, normally when it comes to Java world, how do we create variables in Java? So, okay, by no mean, okay, especially for Java people, by no mean I'm saying Java is not good. Come on, I'm a Java developer myself, I'm a Java trainer. I love Java. The only thing is Scala has lots of features. It's just that I'm showing you the importance of Scala so that you will get motivated. Okay, by no mean I'm saying Java is bad. Okay, I love Java. So let me just come back to here, come back to this. So how do we create variables in Java? We say int I equal to 9. That's how we create a variable, right? And that's how we assign a value. Now when it comes to this I variable, you can see the first thing you're saying is int. You're not saying I. You can see that the first thing which we are saying is int, not I. That means data type is more important than variable name. That is in Scala, that is in Java, right? In Scala, what it says, first you have to mention var, and then mention the variable name and simply assign the value. You don't have to specify the type. It is okay if you don't specify the type. If you say enter, you can see it will automatically detect the type of the variable, which is int. So you can see we got 9 here, we got int. Okay, you don't have to specify the data type to work with it. But it's a good practice to specify data type, right? Because Java is strongly type language or type safe language. We want Scala to be strongly safe. What I'm saying, strongly type language. So what we can do that is, let me create one more variable. We'll say var j. Now how do we specify the type? Let's say num. How do we specify the type here? We'll say colon. So we have to specify the var keyword, then we have to specify the variable name, then we have to provide a colon, which will where we specify the type of the variable, which is int, and then we'll say 7. Now again, you might find it a bit difficult initially, but trust me, once you write 2 or 3 codes, you will be very comfortable with this code, this syntax. Because Scala believes that variable name is more important than the data type. Java, data type is more important than variable name. In Scala, variable name is more important than the data type. That's why we write data type on the right side and variable name on the left side. And to execute this, simply say Control Enter. You get your output. So this is the statement and that's your output. So we got num int 7. Now how do you perform actions here? Okay, let's see how to perform action. So what we can simply do is, now we have 2 variables, right? We have I and num. So we can say I plus num. So when I say I plus num and Control Enter, you can see it is added both the elements. So we got 9 plus 7, which is 16. Okay, this is REPL. Okay, this is, you can write statement by statement, it will give you the output like an interpreted language. Okay, but later on we'll see how to create classes, because see, somewhere in your mind we have the concept of classes, object, variables. We'll come back to that, but I want to show you some advanced thing. That's why I'm showing all this stuff to you. That's how you add 2 values. Okay, we can perform multiple operations here. We can also say I into num. It will give you the multiplication of it. How to print? Control Enter. We got the multiplication, which is 63. What else we can do here? Yeah, that's how we can perform the operation. Now we can also create a string variable. Let's say I want to create a string variable as my name. So we'll say var name equal to Naveen Reddy. Okay, we can also specify the type of it. So we can say after name, we can specify string. And so that's how you specify the data type. We'll say control enter. So you can see we got a string which is Naveen Reddy here. Again, if you cannot see the font size here, that's okay. After this video, we'll type all our code in the worksheet above. Okay. So yeah, that's how you assign the value to a variable. So that's how you create a variable. Okay. And yeah, so that's your second video where second coding video where we talked about how to use worksheet, how to create variables, how to perform action. In the next video, we'll try to explore some more features in Scala like constants and all those stuff. So that's it. So in the last video, we have talked about Scala interpreter, right? Where we just have to write a line, and then when you say Control Enter, it will give you the output instantly. You don't have to write the full bunch of code to get the output. Now let's try to understand how to work with worksheet. Now as you can see, we got a worksheet here where we got object demo. Now why we have to do this is because when it comes to Java, we have to write a class demo, and then we have to mention the public static void main. And the reason why we use static main is because we don't need object to call main, because we cannot create object of main without calling main. So that's why we make it static, right? Now Scala says we don't need all those stuff. You simply say demo. Create an object, obj object demo. It's a real instance which we can directly use it. Okay. Again, we'll talk about this later once we talk about the classes object concept. But here, whatever you type here, you will get instant answer here itself. You don't have to go to console to see the output. Example, let's say if I say welcome to Scala worksheet, let's say this is hello world, and as soon as I save it, you can see the output instantly there itself. You don't have to go to console and see the output. It is that awesome. Okay. Now what else? Let's say I want to create a variable now. So the way we can create a variable is by saying var. Okay, var is used to create a variable, and we can specify the variable name as num, and we have to provide the data type using colon and the type, which is int, and let's say 8. Now if you're thinking about Java where we use int, float, so normally what happens is in Java we have int, we have float, we have double. Now all these types, in total we have 8, right? We have 8 types. We have short int, we have long, we have boolean. So if we talk about all this, this stuff are called as primitive data types. And that's why Java is not purely object oriented, right? Because in Java we still write int, float, which are coming from C programming. So Java is somewhere, because of data types, because of primitive types, Java is not fully object oriented. And we still have wrapper classes to cover it up, right? So wrapper classes are like covers to this. So instead of using int in wrapper class, we write integer. Instead of float type, we write float class. Instead of char, we write character class. But in Scala, everything is a class. In fact, this int is also a class. So in Scala, we don't have primitive variables. So this int is a class itself, and this num is an object. Okay, if you think that this is a primitive, no, it's a class. And this 8 is also an object in Scala. Again, we'll see that how that is an object. And if you can see that we are getting instant reply here, and now we can say print the value of num. Let's see, is it that working? It works. So you can see we got the output as 8. So when you print the value of num, we got the output as 8. Now what else we can do here? Let's perform some operations. We'll create one more variable. Let's say time bin. Let's say this is num1, and we are printing num1 here. Let's say we are creating one more variable which is num2 colon int equal to 7, and we can perform the operation as num1 plus num2. Again, we have seen this in the last video, right? But still I want to do this. Now why I want to do this is because even if I remove this semicolon, it works. Okay, there is no harm. You can see if I run this code now, you are getting the output. That means in Scala, we don't need semicolon. As soon as your line ends, as soon as you can see there is no line, there's no statement, there's no characters or words ahead, it will end the statement there itself. Again, you can write semicolon, or that is not compulsory to write, because you don't have to give lots of pressure to your little finger, right, to type that semicolon. So we can simply say num1 plus num2 and you got the output. Just simply say save, it will give you the output here itself. Now what else we can do? In fact, I think Scala has copied this concept from Swift. I'm not sure, okay, I'm just guessing it. Because if you learn Apple programming, Swift programming, or yeah, in Swift, it will give you output instantly. I guess it is called as workbook in Swift. I'm not sure, I forgot the point. But anyway, so we can add those two values. What else we can do here? We can define a string, we can define all the stuff. But let's say, can I change the value of num1 if I assign? Let's say if I say num1, equal to 23, will it work? Yes, you can change the value, right? Okay, you can see we are able to change the value here. But what happens is, in Scala believes that there should not be any mutation. Now, what is mutation means? Changing the variable value or changing the value of a type. Changing the value is called as mutation. And we should not do mutation is because Scala believes in concurrency, as we have seen in the introduction of Scala. Scala believes in, where is that? Yeah. So Scala believes in concurrency, right? Where it is? It was here. So Scala believes in concurrency, and how to achieve concurrency? When you have multiple threads working on the same variable, what happens is, if one thread is changing the value, the other thread value will change, right? And we don't want to do that. If there are multiple threads working on the same variable, we should not change the value of a variable. There should not be any mutation. Because see, change is good, right? Change is good because the only thing which is constant is change. And sharing is good because sharing is caring. So when there are multiple threads, they can share the same variable. But changing and sharing, that is the real problem. So you should not create a variable which is changing and sharing at the same time, right? So Scala believes in concurrency. So how to achieve a constant value? I don't want anyone to change the value of num1. Now, how do we do that in Java? So in Java, what we do is we simply say, I want to create a final variable. So when you make a variable final, it means you cannot change the value of it. In Scala goes ahead and say, okay, the only way to do that is by using val. So when you use a val to create a variable, it becomes a constant. And you can see once you specify val, you cannot change the value. So if I go to the error now, it says reassigning to val, it is not allowed. So if you say var, that means you can change the value. If you say val, you cannot change the value. So if you say val, it creates a constant. And in future, if you want to create any variable, always make it val. Again, you cannot change the value, but that's not the intention of Scala, right? Scala believes all the data should be constant because we want to achieve concurrency. Okay? But time being, since we are in the learning stage, we'll go for var. So if you say var, it gives you the instant output there. And you can see we got the output as 80. Now what else? Okay, so can I perform some operations? Now if you are performing this operation, you might be thinking, let me create a new variable for that. Let me say var result is equal to num1 plus num2. Now by any mean, let me just simplify it. By any mean, if you are thinking that we are able to, okay, let me remove this stuff. Let me just make it very easy. Initially, let's do that. So if you are thinking that we are doing 8 plus 7, that means this 8 is a value and this 7 is a operator, and that's not the case. In Scala, everything is object. In Scala, everything is object and everything is a method. So this plus here is not a operator. Okay, can you see that? There's a pop-up there. If you can see, def is the way you define a method or a function. So def is the way you define a function, and the function name is plus. It is accepting a variable which is int I mean, it is accepting a int variable, and it returns a int variable. Now, if you're familiar with C++ programming where we have operator overloading, this is what we are doing here. This plus here is not an operator, it's a function. Let me repeat, plus is a function. I know you are in bit of a shock now. It's because we don't have operator overloading in Java. And if you are comfortable with Java, that means you know that in Java we don't use operator overloading, but in Scala we do, because Scala is also a functional programming. So this plus looks like an operator, but that's a method or a function. How it works? So imagine 8 is an object, and we are using a dot operator there, and the function name is plus, and the addition which is the addition operator, and this 7 we are passing as a parameter, and you can see we are still getting the output. So we can see we got the output as 15. That means this 8 is an object, this dot is the operator, this plus is the function, and this 7 is the parameter which you are passing in the function, and we are getting the value which is 15. And that is something awesome about Scala, right? It is this is both a object oriented and a functional programming. So in the last video we have talked about how to assign variables. I mean, also how to create a variable, how to assign the values, and how to add to objects. Now, when you say you're performing some operation here, so when you're thinking that when you say 8 plus 7, so when you're saying 8 plus 7, so that's not exactly 8 plus 7. What we are doing is, so we don't have any plus operator in Scala. So everything we use is a method. So example, if you use plus there, that's a function. Again, when I use method and function, that means the same, right? Not exactly same, but this is a function. So this plus operator here is a plus. I mean, it's a function, because Scala is also a functional programming. So that's how it looks. So in this video, let's talk about classes. So just to define that, I will open a Java. So I have two Eclipse in which I have, so in one I have Java, in another we have Scala. So in this Java part, what I will do is I will create a class, because normally as a Java programmer, we have this habit of creating a class, right? And we'll go for a very typical example of student. We'll click on finish. Now in this student class, what we have is, if I open that, so let's say in this student class I have three variables. One is int roll number, and let's say only int roll number, then we have string name, and then we have the last one as int marks. Okay, so I just have these three variables here. And so normally if you don't mention the type of the access here, that means it's a package private, right? That means it can be accessible inside the package itself. Now if if I want a constructor here, so I can say right click, source, generate constructors with field. Let's fetch all, and okay, you got a constructor here. We can also assign, we normally also use two other methods, which is hash. I mean, because in Java we follow the concept of Java beans, right? So in Java beans we have to make sure that you have getter and setter for that. So we have to use getters and setters because we want to implement Java beans here. And what else we need? We need one more thing, which is a hash function. I mean the hash code method. So we'll say generate hash code and equals. So this is what we implement in Java, right? So if you want to achieve all this thing in Scala, you don't have to write all this line. Can you imagine how many lines of code we are writing here? We are writing approximately 70 lines of code. Can you see that? 70 lines of code. Let's do that in Scala. How we create a class? So I will remove all this code here. Let me get a class here. So in order to create a class in Scala, we simply use a special keyword called as case, and we use a class, and we'll say student, and that's it. You got your class ready. Okay, that's your class. I mean, of course, you will not trust me, right? But that's a class. Now, this thing here, this round bracket specify the constructor. So you don't have to create a class and then create a constructor. You can create a constructor as soon as you get a class. So you can specify the variables here. So I can say I have the first variable as var. I will say this is roll number of type int. Then I can say I have a var which is name of type string. And I have a int, I mean I have a var which is marks, and it is int. So you can compare this thing with your Java code. So if you can compare your Java code here, that's your Java code, right? So you can compare this with this one line. And you can also specify some default values. So let's say in this constructor itself, if we can create a default constructor here. So I can create a default constructor. I will say source and a default, where is default constructor? So a constructor with no fields, and okay, so I got a default constructor here, and I can assign some values, right? I can say by default, if a student is not specifying roll number will be 1. If he's not specifying the name will be by default, let's say Naveen, and it's not specifying the marks by default will be, let's say, 90. That's the default values. We can achieve the same thing in student by specifying the values here itself. We can say the default value for roll number, let's say this is 1. The default value for name is, let's say, Naveen, and the default value for marks, let's say this is 90. So we can achieve the same stuff here in one line. You see that? It's that amazing. And if you want to provide some definition here, if you want to provide some methods, you just have to open the brackets and you have to close the brackets. So with this 3 lines of code, we have actually created a class with a constructor which accepts multiple parameters. Awesome, right? So now let's create an object of it. Now how do we create an object? It's very simple. We can simply say, I want to create an object like, okay, hold on, how will you create an object here? So it's very simple. We just simply have to say var, we'll say s1 equal to student, a round bracket, and that's it. We got our first object here, and you can see we are getting some instant output. We got a student object with the default values. Even if you don't mention any value here, it will take the default values. But we can change it, right? I can say I want the roll number as 4, I want the name as Rahul, and I want the marks as 75. Now if I create the object, we got the object with those values. In fact, we can also specify only 4. If I specify only 4, it will take 4 as a value, and the remaining part will be taken from the default value. So it was taking the roll number as 4, that's the element, but this 2 is taking as taking as default. So that also means that we are also achieving constructor overloading here automatically. You don't have to do any stuff there. So we are achieving constructor overloading by default. It is that awesome. Because in Java, you have to create multiple constructors. So this constructor which takes nothing, then this constructor which takes everything, then one more constructor which takes only one parameter, next constructor which takes only one parameter, which is name, next constructor which takes only one parameter, marks. It is very hectic, right? So we can specify, we can pass 2 parameters here. I can say this is, let's say this is Rahul. So I'm not specifying the third parameter, so I'm specifying only 1, 2. So I'm specifying this is 4, I'm specifying this is Rahul. So this will be taken as default. But what happens if I pass only Rahul here? So it will get confused, right? Because the confusion is, how will you know that which variable you assign the value? So in case if you're passing the variable is not matching with the first variable, it will give you error. At that time, I specifically have to mention that we assign the name. And you can see the name is changed, but remaining thing, which is roll number and marks, is same. So that's how you create a class, you create a constructor, and you create an object. The thing which we do here, we have to write lots of stuff, right? We have to write lots of lines of code. You can see that. So this is the difference between Java and Scala. So if you are from Java background, if you have done this, you know what I'm talking about, right? In Scala, we can write in those things in 2 lines. Again, there's a learning curve here, but the only thing is it is worth learning, right? So now let's see, how do we define method in Scala? So it's very simple now. So let's say I want to define a method, a function or a method in Scala named as show. So I can say def. So that's the keyword we use to define a function. And I can mention a function name as, let's say, show. And so we just have to say define function show. And now we can, in fact, we don't have to provide, we can provide the brackets there. And we have to mention the equal to sign, and we can do whatever you want. We can say print ln, it will print, let's say, hi. Okay, that's it. That's how you define a function. The only thing you have to remember is we use a equal to operator when you define a function. Again, if you have multiple lines of code, then we have to use that curly brackets which we use in Java. So we have to, okay, where's that? So we have to use curly brackets only when you have more than one line. But if you have only one line, you don't even need curly brackets. Okay. Now, how do we call the method? We can just very simple as we have done in Java itself. We can simply say show, and you can see we should be getting the output here. We're taking lots of time. You know, there is some bug in the system. You know, it takes lots of time to iterate. Anyway, so you can see we got the output as high. So we can define the function by using a def keyword, and we can specify show. We have to use the equal to symbol, and we can write all our statements here. Now, if you have only one statement, you don't have to even mention the curly brackets. We can mention equal to println, and now even now it will work. If you can see, we got the output which is high, right? So that's how we can define a function. Now, what else? Now let's go back to Java. Let me see what else we can do here. So let's say I have a main class here. I will say this is a class. Let's name this as a demo class which has a main function. And from this main function, I want to create two student object. I will say student S1 equal to new student. I want to pass some values here. Okay, let me pass 1, comma, Naveen, comma, let's say this is just 80. Okay, that's 1. Let me just copy this, and this is S2, and this is second, and this is Rahul, and let's say this is 90. So what I want to do now is I want to perform an operation here which will compare these two objects. So if I say if I try to print S1, okay, if I try to print S1 dot greater, I mean is greater, that's how we do it, right? So we can say is greater, and we can pass S2. So now in Java normally we use methods, right? So if you want to compare two objects, we always use a function, I mean a method like is greater. So if it is greater, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. But unfortunately, I don't have any method called as is greater. So I'm creating that method here inside my student class, which will have inside this method will return a boolean value, and will return. Now, how do we compare this to? We can simply say this roll number, I mean this marks. How will you compare this greater? We'll simply use marks. So if this marks is greater than S2 dot marks, let's say I want to sort all the students based on their marks. So we can use this method which is greater. And if you can run this code, I mean not this one. If you run this code, you can see we are getting the output as false because this is not greater, right? And if I replace this, if I change this value to 99, and if you run this, you can see we got true. That means we can compare two objects with the help of a method. But how do we do that in Scala? So in Scala, what we can do is Scala supports operator overloading. What it means is I can compare two objects. I can say this is S2 and this is student. And you can see the object Rahul got the values, which is 1 Rahul. I will remove this stuff. That means the object which will be getting is 1 Naveen 90. The second object I will say 2 Rahul, and let's say 88. Okay, and you can see we got two objects. One is 90 and one is 88. And how do we compare here? So we don't use, I mean we can use methods, but we can also use something else. What is that something else? I can say S1 greater than S2. So we can actually use a greater than symbol here. But hold on. Before using that, we have to define that method here. So we can say def. We can define this function, I mean this method which is our function which is greater than sign, and we can pass a parameter which is S2, because this is actually S1 dot, this is the function name, and we are specifying the S2 as a parameter. Again, we have done that earlier, right, with the help of a plus operator. And now we can define a function. It returns you a Boolean value. So I can say this is Boolean. Now it is based on what? So it is return marks is greater than. So marks is greater than what? We'll compare s2 dot marks. That's it. Okay, there is something wrong here. It return s2. It's not working here. What's the issue? I missed something, I guess. So we have, oh, we have to mention the type of s2, right? So s2 is of type student. My mistake. So whenever we define s2, we have to mention the type, right? And you can see we are getting the answer which is true because s1 is greater than s2 because of their marks. But if I change the value, if I change this to 98, and you can see we got false. Hold on, it is not yet there. Where is false? Come on, come on, come on. I want false as an output there. Yeah, you can see we got false. So we can, so in Scala we can, it supports functional, function overloading. We can also use the operators as the function name. So once we have worked with objects and methods in Scala, let's see how do we use what do you say, list of values here. Okay. Now let's say if you want to create a list in Java. So this is a Java console here. I'm creating a list, and normally to use a list we say list of integers, and we'll say this is nums equal to, we say new add a list, and then we can specify the values here, right? So we can say, let me import the package first, which is util. Okay, so once we have got the package, we can add the values by saying nums dot add, and we can say value 4, and then we can add one more value below. We can say this is, let's say this is, we can say this is, let's say 8. So we can do that, right? This is one way. Another way is, if you already know the values, we can directly say arrays dot as list by passing some values. I can say 4 comma 7 comma 2 comma 3, right? So we can pass the values like that. So we can use arrays dot as list, and we can mention the values here, right? And how do we, so this is how you do in Java, right? Now if we go to Scala, let's see in Scala how we do it. So in Scala we simply say var nums equal to, we say list. We don't have to use any new keyword. We can simply say list, and we can specify 4, 7, 2 and 3. So the thing we can do there is same as here. So we can write this stuff here. We can say list of values. So it is, you can see this nums is by default a list of int. Okay, so that's how we create a list here. Now how do we print a list of elements in this Java? So to print the list of elements, we can use a normal for loop, or we can use enhanced for loop, right? So normally in enhanced for loop we use int I colon nums, and then we can print individual values, right? So we can print I, and if I run this code, we got all the values. In Scala also what we can do is we can use enhanced for loop here. It is very simple to use enhanced for loop here. We can say a for n, but in Java we specify a colon, right? Here we don't have to specify a colon. We can use a arrow on the left hand side, and we can say this is nums, and we can put a curly brackets here, and we, instead of saying system.println, we only use println here, and let's print n, and you can see we'll be getting the output here. We can see we got the output as 4, 7, 2 and 3. In fact, we don't require this curly brackets when you have only one statement. That will be because Scala believes in less number of lines, right? So why to waste your number of lines just because of semicolon? So I can write that in one line, and you can see we got the output as 4, 7, 2 and 3. So that's how you use enhanced for loop in Scala. We use a left arrow here. Okay, so in Java we use colon. Here we use a left arrow. Now I don't know if you are familiar with Lambda expression in Java. We can also use Lambda expression here. So let me just do it in Scala in Java first, and then I will show you how to do the same thing in Scala. So let's go back to my Eclipse in Java, Now, how do we use a lambda expression here? It is very simple. Now, to know more about lambda expression, you can just go to, if you don't know lambda expression, that's okay. You can just go to the description. In description, I have a link for the how to use lambda expression for list of values. So I will just remove this part. So in Java 8, especially, we can use nums dot for each. Now this only works in Java 8. Okay, it will not work in Java 7. So I can use for each, and I can specify I, and we can use an arrow, which is system O. Okay, that's weird. So I and arrow, and I can specify system dot out dot. Hey, why the shortcut is not working here? Okay, that's weird. System dot out dot. Okay, I think I should type it here. We'll say system dot out dot print ln, and I can specify the value I there. So even this thing works in Java. So if I run this code, you can see we got the output. Now, how exactly it's working, you can just go to the comment section. I mean, you can go to description area and you can see that. But just to give you a glimpse, what happens is in Java 8, nums has a method which is for each, and for each takes the object of consumer, and consumer is a interface. Okay, so what we can do is here in the code, we can specify that we are passing the object of consumer. In fact, I think you should watch the video in the description. You will get the complete idea instead of wasting time here. So it is assumed that you can use lambda expression here. So in Java 8, you can use lambda expression. In Scala also we can use lambda expression. So again, the concept of lambda expression came to Scala. It came to Java 8 from Scala itself. So if you want to do the same thing in Scala, we can use nums dot. Again, the method name is for each itself, and we can use I as we have used in Java. But we can specify the type of I here. We can say int, and then instead of using, so in Java we have used a single arrow, right? We have used a single arrow. In Scala we have to use double arrow, so we have to use a double arrow here, and we can specify I want to do print ln of I. That's it. So you can see we are getting an error here. Why I'm getting error? That is weird. Oh, we have, instead of using, okay, I've used a wrong brackets. We have to use a curly brackets here. Yeah, so we have to use a curly brackets, not round brackets. So you can say we got the output. So we use lambda expression in Scala also. So I would recommend you to learn about lambda expression more in Java 8 first before jumping to Scala. So in Scala we use equal to and greater than sign. In Java we use arrow and a hyphen and a greater than sign. So that's how we use a list of values with lambda expression in Scala and Java. In the last video we have talked about list, right? So we have created a list of elements. So this is what we have done in Java code, and then the equivalent part is here. So this is what we have done in Scala. So we have used something called as lambda expression, right? So we can print the elements using lambda expression. Also, the only thing you have to remember is in Java we use for each as a method, a function. Here it is also a function, but we use a curly bracket to define to define a function here. So what I will do now is let's talk more about list here. Just two more examples here on list. So what normally happens is, let's say I want to reverse all these elements. So now the way you can reverse all this element is by so in Java we have collections.sort, right? So we say collections.sort nums. So when you say not sort but reverse, so let's say I want to say reverse. So we simply say collections.reverse and we pass the nums here. So as soon as I pass nums, and if I run this code, you can see we got the output in a reverse format. So we got 3, 2, 7, 4. So that's the reverse order, right? So it is changing the actual values. I mean, when you say reverse, that means this collection is actually changing the values of the list. What it means is this nums, his actually, initial value was 4, 7, 2, 3. Later when you say reverse, it is changing the values of list itself. That means we are going for mutation. Now it is good, right? I mean, we are changing the value, but the problem is if you have multiple threads working on the same list of elements. So let's say you have 4 threads working on the same list of elements, and due to this reverse, one thread is changing all the values which is affecting the other threads, right? So mutation is very bad thing when it comes to concurrency or using multiple threads. So I mean, this feature is very good, but the problem comes when you have multiple threads working with it. So in Scala, what we do is we can also use reverse here. We can say if I run this code without reversing it, you can see everything. We are getting everything in proper sequence. We are getting. Okay, let me just write. Let me remove that println. Let me just give a space so that you will see in the one. You can see everything in one line. Is it not working? Okay, I think it's not working. Let's go for println itself. Okay, so you can see we are getting everything in proper format, right? But let's say. If I, okay, is it println works or the space is not working? Let's go for println. So println print everything in proper format, right? What if I say reverse? If I say nums dot reverse, okay, so if I say nums dot reverse, and nums dot reverse here returns the object of list. So it is not a void method, it's a method which returns a list, and that's why if you only run this code, see the output, you're getting the output as 3274. But after that, if I'm running a for loop, you are getting the actual values, the original values, which is 4723. That means when you say nums.reverse, it is not changing the existing values of nums. That means we are not changing the existing value of list, we are creating a new list here. So what is happening behind the scene is, it is creating a new list for you. So if I say reverse nums, this is what it is doing. It is creating a new list of elements here. Okay, so we are not changing the existing values, it is creating a new list. So even if you are working with multiple threads, that's okay because we are not changing the original list. And that's why Scala is so powerful, right? We don't change the existing value. Okay, that's one of the advantage of using Scala over Java. Okay, let me remove this now, reverse. Now let's, what next? So let's say I have these 4 elements here, and I want to remove top 2 elements. So what we normally do is we say nums dot. We have a method which is remove, in which you have to mention the index. I can say 1. So I can say 0. It will remove the first element, and if I run this code, you can see it will remove. Oh, we're getting exception here. Is it because this one? Oh, we have to specify 4. Which will remove the first element. Oh, even this is not working. Why is that? Is it because I'm using arrays.list? Okay, what arrays.list gives you? Oh, it gives me the list object. So for that I have to, to achieve that we have to create object of array list, the new array list. That's the way it will work. Okay. Now instead of going for the actual input values, just imagine when you want to remove elements, we use that technique. But if you want to achieve the same thing in Scala, let's say I have these 4 elements, or maybe some more elements here. If I want to remove some elements here, we can simply say nums dot drop 2. So what it will do is, if I say nums dot drop 2, it will remove the first 2 elements. So if I remove first 2 elements, we can say drop 2, it will remove 4 and 7. Okay, so you can simply use drop and we can pass 2, which will remove first and second. What we can also do is, let's say I want to remove first 2 and I want to print first 2, next 2. So I want to remove first 2 and then I want to print next 2. So what we can do is we can say dot take 2. So what it will do, it will drop first 2 and it will take next 2. Okay, but again we are not changing the original nums here. Every time you use any of this method, it will return you the object of array list, or it will return you the object of list. So you can see that's the definition here. It returns you the object of list here. Okay, and so that means nums is the complete values. Drop 2 will remove the first 2 elements, and then the remaining elements will be taken by take. So 2, 3, 8, 6 will be taken as an input for take, and take will take out only 2 values, which is 2 and 3. Okay. Now since Scala has some syntactic sugar, which means that you don't have to use the dot operator there. You can simply use the English-like sentence. You can say nums drop 2. So what it will do is it will act like an English-like language. So drop will act as an operator between these two. Okay, so nums dot drops in bracket 2 we can write in an English format. So nums drop 2. In fact, we have seen earlier, right, when we say 7 plus 8, so it looks like we have 7 and then operator then 8, but actually it is a method. It's a function, right? So we simply say 7 dot plus 8. Now, why I'm repeating this same example multiple times, because there is something very different in which is there in Scala. I mean, which is not there in Java, right? So we have to say nums drop 2. So it will take, again, we can also write take 3. It will take first 3 elements now. I mean, it will remove 4 and 7, then it will take 2, 3, 8. And that's what we are getting here. Right? So Scala is more like English language. It has something called as syntactic sugar, which we have used here. So yeah, that's about Scala. That's how we can remove elements, we can add elements and all those stuff. In fact, in the next video also we'll talk about list, but in I mean with a different intention of working with list. In this video, we'll talk more about list. So in the last few videos, we have talked about list a lot, right? We can add elements in that and we can perform some operations. So this is syntactic sugar, which we have the syntax where you can mention the method name without the dot operators, right? We have this object here, we are saying drop without using dot operators. That's fascinating for Java programmers because we don't do that in Java, right? So what else we can do here? So let's say we have this list of values, right, where you have all integers. I mean, is it possible to put some values and a different type of value? Example, true. So now true is not it's not what do you say? It's not number, right? So 4 and 6 they are integers, but 2 is not an integer. Then how it will work? So if you run this code, you can see okay, there's something wrong. I mean, there are lots of bugs here. Let me remove this stuff. Okay, yeah, so you can see we are getting a list, because if I mention a list of numbers, if I only use a list of numbers, it will return you a list which is int, right? So it's detecting that you have all this 4, 6, 5, they are numbers, so it will return you the list of int. But as soon as you add one more value here, which is true, now that's a boolean type, right? So we have integer boolean. So it creates an array of any value. Now what exactly it means? Because when it comes to Java, what we normally do in Java is, let's say if I create an array, when you say arrays.asList, you have to be very specific here. I mean, you can have an array of numbers, or you can have an array. Let's say if I say 4, 5, 8, it will work, right? Because it is integer. But as soon as I write a true here, now there's something wrong, because it returns you, so it returns you the object. I mean, it returns you the list of objects. You cannot put it integer here, so you have to put it object, right? That's what we have learned in Java. In fact, if you put 5.5 here, that's a double, right? So this is integer, this is integer, this is double. So instead of having object, we can also write, I guess we can also write number, because yeah, so because integer and double, they both are the subclass of number class, right? So this is in a hierarchy, right? So if you look at the hierarchy here, so this is the Java hierarchy. So we have data types. So on the top we have object, and then we have primitive, we have non-primitive. So when it comes to string, array, those are non-primitives, right? And all these classes, they actually extend an object class. Now same goes for boolean, character, integer, floating point. In fact, we use double class there. So these are wrapper classes for you. And then we have, so normally this is not the exact class names, this is a different thing, but we have classes which extends object, right? I hope you're getting what I'm trying to convey here. Example, when it comes to integer class and double class, both extends number, right? So if I go to integer class, so if I go to integer and if I jump to integer, you can see it extends a number class. Same goes for double, right? So that's the hierarchy for Java. But when it comes to hierarchy for Scala, we have the topmost hierarchy as any. So we don't have object there, we have any. So any has two things, any val or any reference. So if you talk about primitive types or the classes where you can store data like boolean, char, integer, all those stuff, they belongs to any val. And when you have collections, classes, when you have your own object, that's a part of any ref. Okay, so this is something different in Scala compared to Java. Not very different, but it is something which is new. Okay, so that's how you specify the hierarchy here. So when you specify a number and a boolean value, it will return you the value which is any value. But how about if I put a string here? So let's say if with this true, I'm also putting a string like Naveen. Now what will happen is we have numbers, we have boolean, and we also have a string. So it returns you any, because as per the hierarchy you can see we have a number, we have a boolean type, and we also have a class object which is string. So it returns any because you have to specify, you have to be I mean, what you say, you have to be you have to add up everything, right? So it is any. So that's how you can work with the Scala type hierarchy. So now once we know the basics of list and how exactly we store data of different types, like we have, we can store numbers, we can store strings, we can store even we can have a list with different type of values, right? Example, we have done that here, right? So when I say 4, 6, true, and Naveen, you can see the list, the type of list is any, right? We have talked about the hierarchy. What we'll do in this video is we'll talk about list again, but instead of going for primitive or the inbuilt type of objects, let's have our own objects. So something more complex objects in list. So how to achieve that? So what we'll do is we'll say val, we'll say students. So I need a list of students now, and for that I need to create a class, right? Because you can create an object of a student only when you have a class of it. So normally, how do we create a class? We say case class, and then we mention the class name, which is, let's say, stud. And in this stud, I will pass three parameters. So we can also create a constructor here, right? So we can say my first value is roll number, and the type of roll number is, let's say, int. Then the next one is name, which should be string, and let's say marks, which is again int. So we have this class which has the name is stud, and then we have these three types there. And now let me just remove that just to see the output. Is we are getting the class there. Once we get that, we can go ahead, and yes, we got our class. Now let's create the object of it. So we'll say val, and we'll simply say students, and then equal to. So let's create a list of. So let's create a list, and in this list I will create the first object of student. I will say stud. I will pass multiple values, since this is a list, right, where you have to specify multiple values. So I will say roll number 1, name is, let's say, Naveen, and the marks I will assign is 40. That's my first object. Let's say the next object is student. We'll say this is 2. That's 2. We'll say name is Pooja, and then we got marks as, let's say, 80. That's the marks. Let's go for one more, which is stud 3 of Nadeem, and we'll say this is 60. That's it. That's our list, and you can see once I run this code, once I save this code, you can see we got a list of students here. So this list is of type stud, right? So we have the 3 objects here. Okay. Again, if you're not getting this thing, that's okay. We will be doing so. We'll do the same thing in Java once we're done with this example. So you will get the complete idea how list works in Scala. So we have the list of student here, and now we can perform certain actions, right? Now before performing some action here, let me see how to do this in Java. So let me go back to my Java code, this is Java code here. And let me create a class here, the same class which we were doing there. Let's create a student class. In fact, we have a student class here. Let's do some modification. We do have three things. So everything is done here. We already have a class. Let me remove this thing. In fact, we have that part, right? So now what we'll do is we'll simply say this is list of we'll say list of student. That's how you do it in Java, right? We have to create a collection. We'll say s, or let's say students, or students equal to, we'll say new, or we can directly use add a list. Or let's do that. Let's say new add a list. And so we got this list object here. Now once we got that, let's add some objects here. So we'll say students.add new student by passing 3 values. We'll say one, the same value which is Naveen, and then we'll say this is 40. That's my first object. Then we can add 2 more objects here. We can say this is 2, this is 3, this is Pooja, and this is Nadeem. Now this is 80 and this is 60. So once we got these 3 objects, let's print all the values here. So it says student s colon students. That's how you print the values, right? Using enhanced for loop. And we can say s, we can simply print the object itself, right? If I run this code, and you can see we got the output. Oh, unfortunately I don't have toString method here. Let me do that. Let me say right click, source toString. I want to print all the values. Okay, I hope you're familiar with toString method. And if I run this code now, you can see we got all the values here. Now if you compare, we have the same values here, right? We have the same output there. But the only difference is we have to write multiple lines of code here, and we just have 1 line of code in Scala. Okay, now once we got the list of objects, what are the features we can achieve here? So let's say in this list, if I want to print only one, there are lots of code you have to write, right? You have to use students.get, and you have to specify the first index number. In Scala, what we can do is we can say val first equal to students dot. So there is a method called as head, but as soon as you say not method, there's a method called as head. As soon as you say head, it will give you the first element, because this is the first element, right? So when you say head, it will give the first element. Any guess if I say students.tail? So we have one more method which is tail. So your guess is right. Instead of getting the first one, we're getting everything. So when you say head, you will get the first one. When you say tail, it will give you all the remaining elements. Now again, if you say, we can also do that. We can say tail.tail. So tail.tail will give you the tail of the tail. So it will give the last value itself. Is it working here? So we got the last value. We can also achieve tail.head, which will give you the tail's first object, or the first element, which is the second one, right? So this is tail, right? This is tail, and head out of it is this one. So we can use this one also, right? So we can use this head. We can use head and tail as a function, as a method. I mean, there are lots of methods we can work with. Now what else we have? We also have some method like, let's say, let me get a val, and we'll say I want only toppers. So I want, when you say toppers, I mean those people who are getting marks above 60 or more. Okay, and so I mean above 60 and more. 60 and more. Okay, so what we'll do now is I want only those people who are above 60 or 60 above 60. What we'll do is this students list, it has a method called as filter. Okay, so when you say filter, what you can do is in this filter you just have to pass the condition. Now basically, how do you pass a condition? I can simply say s arrow, and we'll say s dot marks should be greater than equal to 60. So I'm specifying a condition here. Again we'll see this in Java, how this works in Java. So you can see we got list, we got 20, I mean we got 80, and we got 60, right? So when you say filter based on the marks, we are getting these two things. We are not getting the first one, which is 40, because it is not satisfying the condition, right? If you want to do the same thing in Java, in this for loop, we have to say if s dot marks is greater than equal to 60, then only print, right? So it will print only those objects which are satisfying the condition. The same thing you can achieve with the help of filter method. So in this filter, you have to pass the object. So it will take one object and it will satisfy the condition. Still, if you're not happy with this, let me explain this with the help of Java 8 concept. Okay, let me just do that here. So how this works in Java 8 is we have to say students dot filter. So first of all we have to say students dot stream, okay, stream dot filter. In fact, we have filter in Java also. So it was introduced in Java 1.8. It was not there earlier. Okay. So in Scala we can use filter. Even in Java we can use filter, but only in Java 8. It was not possible before that. And okay, so this is one way. This is one way which we have done. This is the imperative type of coding which we can done in Java 7 also. In Java 8, what we can do is, so when you say filter, so filter will ask you. So if I go to filter method, which belongs to stream, it is asking you for the object of predicate. So I need to pass object of predicate, right? So predicate is basically an interface. So if I go to predicate there, okay, if you want the complete description how that works in simple step, you can go to my, I will go to description area. There's a link for the for how this predictive interface works. So just you will get that idea from there. So it has a method called test and it's an interface. So we have to say new predicate for students, and let's define the class itself here. This is an anonymous class which I'm creating here. Let me import the package predicate, and the method name is public boolean test, which accepts. Is it boolean? Yes, it is boolean, and we'll say this is test which accepts the integer value, or this will accept a string student value, and we'll check if s dot marks is greater than equal to 60, return true, else return false. Okay, so we got this stream, and I can print all the values of stream by saying for each, and we can pass, we have done with for each, right? So you know how it works. So I can say s colon system.out.print, that's not right. This system.out.println, this is not working here, system.out.println, and we can pass the value which is s itself. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm finding the stream out of it. I'm filtering out all the elements based, so we have to pass the object of predicate. Again, you will find the link in description area how exactly predicate works. It takes the method as a definition, and you can print all the values. So you can see even that works the same way. So you can see this output is because of the predicate. Now, since predicate is a functional interface, you can see it's a functional interface, and whenever you have a functional interface, we can use Lambda. What it simply means is you don't have to mention from here to here. I'm just assuming that you know Lambda expression. If you don't, just go to my channel. Again, I will paste the link there in the description how Lambda expression works. And in fact, we can show, I think, the if condition where there we can simply say, even this will work, right? Return s dot marks greater than or equal to 60. Okay, and since you have only one statement, we don't require return. We don't require this curly brackets if you have only one statement, and you can write everything in one line, provided you have an arrow there. So in Java we use single arrow, right? So this is the same thing we are doing, right? We are saying, let me just write it here. So that's the same thing we are doing. So if you run this code, we are getting the same output. So we are filtering and we are passing the object of, we are passing the Lambda expression. So in Java, Lambda expression is done with the help of single line, hyphen arrow or hyphen greater than sign. In Scala, we use equal to and greater than sign. Okay, so we can use filter. In fact, we can also do partition based on this. We can say val. We can say what? How do we do partition here? Okay, so we can say, so what I want partition is, I want people, so person who scored below 60, there should be one partition, if you are scoring above 60, that should be one partition. Let me add one more object just to give you more glimpse out of it. We'll say this is student 4, and this will be, let's say, Mohini, and let's say this is 70. Okay, so we got two people, let's say 50. So we got two people below 60 and we got two people above 60, right? So we can create a partition here. We'll say this is parts equal to student dot partition. So we have one more method which is partition. So you have to specify the condition here on which basis you want to find the partition. So I can specify the condition there. I can say for student, again we can use lambda expression, and we can say student dot marks, again the same thing, dot 60. Now this parts will give you all the values, but in two particular partitions. You can see we are getting a partition of two values. We are getting one list, comma, second list. So the value of the first list is from here to here. That's your first list, and this is your second list. So that's how you create. A partition in Scala. Okay, so we can use partition method, which is inbuilt method. So there are lots of inbuilt features available in Scala, as you can see. So we are working more on list of collections in Scala just to get the power of it. So that's it from this video. We have talked about lots of stuff. We have talked about how to create a list of complex objects. How do we use head? How do we use tail? How do we use filter? How do we use partition? In the last video, we have talked about how to use partition, how to use filter, and then how to create a complex object, right? Now what we'll do now in this video is we'll be working with tuples, or tuples we can say. So what exactly tuples are? So let's say you have, so when you run a partition, so it is dividing the list into two parts, right? The first part is, the first part will have two elements, which is 60 and 80, which are satisfying the condition. And then last two, which is 40 and 50, they are not satisfying the condition, right? So again, so we have two partition, we have two parts here, part 1 and part 2. So normally what happens is when you work with a method, it returns only one value, right? But in Scala, we can return multiple values, and those values are called as tuples or tuples, or whatever you can call it. Okay, so it is normally referred as tuples or tuples. I don't know how you pronounce it. Let's say tuples. I will use the term tuples here. Okay, so it is returning a tuple to you, right? Because you're not getting one value, you're getting two values, two lists. Now, how do you fetch one list out of it? I don't want the second value, I want only the first list. So I want only the first list here, from here to here. So how we can do that is we'll say val, part 1 equal to, so that again we can use any name there. So we'll say part 1 parts dot. Now how do you fetch the first value? Now we cannot use index numbers here, so tuples doesn't support index number, but we can use _1. _1 means the first part of it, and if you say enter, it should give you the value, hopefully. Yes, so you got the value, which is 80 and 60, because we are fetching the first part of tuple. We can fetch the second part also. We can say part 2 equal to parts dot _2. So it will return the second part of tuple, which is this, right? Which is 40 and Naveen and Mohini 50. Now we cannot use something in this way. Normally we do it in list. We cannot do that here. This will not work, because in tuples we need to use the syntax as _1. Okay, that's how you get the value, right? So this is one way. So if you're not comfortable with this _1, even I'm not comfortable with that. There are lots of people they're not comfortable. What we can simply do is here itself we can say part 1 comma part 2. Instead of doing this later, we can simply say part 1 part 2. So we are defining two things here, which is part 1 and part 2. In fact, no, we don't have to use parts here. We just simply say val part 1 and part 2. So the first part, if I try to print the first, in fact it is done here. Let me try to print the first value. Let me say part 1, and you can see if I say part 1, why I'm using space there. Is it working? Okay, if you can see that we got the output for part 1, and now if I say this is part 2, it will print the value for part 2. So that's how you can use tuples or tuples in Scala. So that's it. That's about this video.